The first time specialist Garrett Reeves met an alien face-to-face, he had a dislocated shoulder, a cracked helmet visor, and 3 broken fingers. The circumstances weren't ideal, but then again, they rarely were for Garrett. The dust storm had come out of nowhere, a swirling wall of ochre wind that slammed into the forward recon team like a runaway freight train. Their armored rover, the Durango, tipped halfway onto its side before grinding against a rock formation and coming to a halt. Alarm screamed in his ears as Garrett crawled out through the emergency hatch, coughing, blood dripping from his nose. "Reeves?" Lieutenant Hart's voice burst through comms, full of static. "Is anyone still mobile?" Garrett pressed a gloved hand to his mouth until the bleeding slowed, then toggled his mic. "I'm good, kinda. I think the Durango's done, though. Everyone else is accounted for. You're closest to the relay tower. Get it back online." Garrett looked toward the jagged ridge line where the communications relay sat, half a mile away. Something flickered near it movement, not human. He started walking. The exoplanet, designated K-29 by the Terran Exploration Corps, was the kind of place you'd send a probe and then decide to never visit. But the minerals buried beneath its rust-colored surface were worth billions. So, naturally, humans showed up. Garrett trudged up the slope, his boots sinking into the soft dust. His shoulder throbbed with each step. He knew it was dislocated. He'd done it once playing football in high school and never forgot the feeling. His fingers weren't right either. 2 of them refused to bend. The pain made his vision swim, but he kept going. Halfway up the ridge he saw it. A figure tall, thin, and moving with a strange, floaty grace stood next to the tower. It looked like it was inspecting it. Garrett crouched behind a boulder, squinting through his cracked visor. The alien turned. It didn't have eyes in the normal sense, but Garrett could tell it was looking at him. There was a brief moment of stillness. Then it moved fast. Garrett barely had time to stand before the alien was in front of him. It didn't attack. It just floated there, blinking with what looked like a vertical slit in the center of its head. Its skin shimmered like oil on water. Garrett raised both hands, trying not to wince as his bad shoulder protested. "Hi," he said, teeth clenched. The alien tilted its head. Then it spoke not in words, but through a translator box attached to its chest. The voice was oddly calm. "You are injured." Garrett looked down at his arm. The suit was torn, blood soaking through the thick fabric where the bone had likely snapped in the forearm. His fingers were swollen and purple. He laughed a short, sharp bark. The alien flinched back. Garrett winced as he sat on a nearby rock. "It's just a scratch," he muttered. The alien stared at him. "You are bleeding. Your limb is compromised." "Yeah," Garrett said, breathing hard. "It's not great." The alien crouched beside him. "You laugh. Why?" Garrett looked at it, sweat running down his dirt-streaked face. "Because this is the 5th time I've been injured on this rock and it's starting to feel personal." The alien tapped a device on its wrist, scanning his arm. A soft light passed over the injury. "Fractures, ligament damage, circulatory distress. You require assistance." Garrett didn't argue. He was losing strength fast. "Do you have medical supplies?" he asked. The alien stood. "Come." Garrett tried to rise, but his legs buckled. The alien caught him, surprisingly strong. It half lifted, half dragged him to a sleek craft hidden behind the ridge. Garrett had never seen anything like it, shiny and seamless, like it had been grown instead of built. Inside, the air was cooler. The alien guided him onto a platform, then activated a machine that hovered over his arm. "This will stabilize," the alien said, "but it is not permanent repair." "Good enough," Garrett whispered. The pain dulled as the machine wrapped his arm in a gel-like substance that hardened into a cast. It felt cool and supportive. The alien attached a sling that seemed to adjust itself automatically. Garrett closed his eyes for a moment. When he opened them again, he was lying on a cushioned slab. The alien was watching him, expression unreadable. "You endure pain with humor," it said. Garrett smiled slightly. "Not humor, sarcasm, there's a difference." The alien seemed to consider this. "I am called Vireel," it said finally. Garrett Reeves, Specialist Terran Recon. Vireel bowed its head slightly. Your kind is difficult to predict. That's mutual. Over the next few hours, Garrett learned that Vireel was part of a survey team from a species called the Alari. They had been observing the planet for generations, long before humans arrived. They didn't mind sharing, but they were cautious. Vireel explained that the relay tower was interfering with one of their data conduits. Garrett promised to fix it once he wasn't dying. They stayed in the alien ship overnight. Garrett's arm throbbed constantly, and without proper treatment, he knew it could get worse. He needed a hospital. But for now, he was stable. The next morning, Vireel led him back to the humans' forward base. When the guards saw Garrett limping toward the gates, arm in a translucent sling shaped like a question mark, they ran to him. "Jesus, Garrett," one of them shouted. "What happened to your arm?" "Fell in love with a boulder," Garrett muttered. He was rushed to the med bay. The Alari sling came off, revealing the swelling and bruising underneath. A field scan confirmed what he already suspected: his ulna was fractured in 2 places, and his shoulder had been completely dislocated. The fingers were broken, but not compound. 6 to 8 weeks, the medic said, wrapping his arm in a more traditional cast. "You're grounded until then," Garrett nodded. "Figures." Later, while lying in bed, he saw Vireel standing silently in the doorway. "You are recovering?" Slowly, Vireel stepped in. "Your people treat injury with stoicism. That is intriguing." Garrett sat up, wincing. "We don't all. Some of us cry like babies. You did not." "I didn't have time." There was a pause. "You laughed." Garrett nodded. "Yeah, I guess I did." Vireel tilted its head. "Why laugh at pain?" Garrett looked at his arm, wrapped in a mesh cast, fingers sticking out like sausages. "Because if I don't laugh," he said slowly, "I might scream, and everyone's already on edge." Vireel was silent for a long time, then it said, "Perhaps your kind is not as fragile as I thought." Garrett smiled faintly. "We're not unbreakable," he said. "Just stubborn." That night the base was quiet. Outside, K-29's second moon rose above the jagged cliffs, casting a pale light over the compound. Garrett lay awake, his arm aching, thinking about Vireel's words. The next morning he was called into a briefing room. Colonel Drenner sat at the head of the table, flanked by 2 officers and a nervous-looking xenoanthropologist. "You're the first human to make direct contact with the Alari," Drenner said. "They've agreed to a preliminary diplomatic exchange." Garrett blinked. "Because I broke my arm, because you handled it with tact." Garrett stifled a groan. "I told them it was a scratch." "You said it while laughing," Drenner corrected. "Apparently that left an impression." Garrett leaned back, his shoulder twinged. "So what now? You're our liaison. Once you're cleared, you'll represent us in further talks. You're putting me in charge of diplomacy? You're the only one they trust." Garrett looked out the window. Vireel stood in the courtyard, waiting. He sighed. "Guess I better not break the other arm," Drenner grunted. "See that you don't." Garrett stood, cradling his cast. He walked slowly toward the door, then paused. "Sir?" "Yes, if they ask why I laughed. What should I tell them?" Drenner looked at him. "Tell them it's how we survive." The med bay lights had a way of humming just wrong enough to make Garrett's eye twitch. It had been 3 days since Vireel walked him to the gate like a chaperone returning an unruly field trip kid. His arm was still in a cast, but the swelling had gone down enough that the color of bruising had shifted from angry plum to a more muted yellowish green. His fingers were functional again, barely. The doctor said he'd keep the sling another 2 weeks, maybe longer if he kept pushing it. He was trying not to. The door hissed open without a knock. Vireel drifted in, head just clearing the top of the frame. "You are not where you promised to be," it said, looking at the cot. Then the bundled uniform folded on the counter. Garrett rubbed his eyes. "I already sat through 2 briefings, a psych consult, and a cultural orientation that involved a 40-minute slideshow on Alari toe gestures. I needed a break. You have not completed neural calibration, because I don't want a translator chip shoved in my ear yet." Vireel's fingers fluttered once. Your language is inefficient. You rely on tone, not content. It causes confusion. We like nuance, Garrett said, stretching carefully. Keeps things spicy. You mean ambiguous. That is not optimal for diplomacy. Garrett pulled his legs off the cot, wincing as he shifted his weight. His side still ached when he twisted too far. Why are you here? They assigned me to monitor your readiness. Oh good, he muttered. A parole officer with gills. I do not have gills. You say that like it's a personal offense. Vireel paused. You are not agreeable today. I'm not agreeable most days. The alien studied him. Garrett didn't meet its gaze. Instead, he reached for the bottle of electrolyte fluid beside the cot and tried to uncap it one-handed. The cap slipped twice before Vireel silently took it, twisted it open with 3 fingers and handed it back. Thanks, Garrett mumbled. You should ask for assistance when you require it. I've been doing things one-handed since I was 16. I can manage. Are all Terrans this obstinate? Only the ones who survive long enough to argue about it. Vireel took a seat on the bench opposite him, its long limbs folding with unnatural precision. The translator hummed faintly, then clicked once. There have been observations, it said. About what? You, Garrett blinked. Is this going to be about my sarcasm again? No, this time it is your healing. Garrett raised an eyebrow. You were injured severely. Yet you have regained significant function in 72 Earth hours. That rate does not align with our biological models. We're not great at a lot of things, Garrett said, but we're annoyingly good at bouncing back. Is it chemical enhancement? Garrett snorted. If you mean painkillers and a stubborn refusal to rest, sure. You do not use regeneration pods, no cellular scaffolding, no neural reprogramming. You simply wait. Waiting's underrated. Vireel looked genuinely unsettled. That is inefficient, maybe, Garrett said, draining the bottle, but it's worked so far. There was a long beat of silence before Vireel stood again. There is a gathering in the lower observation dome. You are expected. Expected to do what? Demonstrate. Garrett narrowed his eyes. Demonstrate what? Resilience. He stared at the alien. You want me to show off being injured? No, they wish to understand how you continue despite injury. You want to watch me hobble around and call it science? Vireel's head tilted. Yes. Garrett grunted and pulled himself upright. Fine. But if someone tries to poke me with a scanner again, I'm filing a complaint. You do not outrank anyone here. I can still file it. 4 levels down, the observation dome wasn't a dome so much as a massive concave platform of transparent resin that overlooked the planet's largest tectonic scar. Garrett had only been there once during orientation. It made him queasy. Now it was full, not of humans. There were only 2 other Terrans, both tucked into the edge of the crowd looking like they'd rather be anywhere else. The rest were Alari tall, iridescent, all in varying shades of blue-green. They stood in loose clusters, murmuring in their own language, the tones subtle and layered. Garrett shuffled in behind Vireel and immediately regretted agreeing to this. Vireel raised one hand. The murmuring stopped. This is Garrett Reeves. He is the one with the broken arm. Thanks for the intro, Garrett muttered. Several Alari moved closer. One of them wore a sash woven from something that shimmered like fish scales. It stepped forward with a fluidity that made Garrett feel like a refrigerator by comparison. You did not repair yourself using augmentation, it said through a different translator box. Nope. You did not regenerate lost tissue, didn't lose any. You did not suppress the signal pathways of the damage. I took some meds. That counts, right? The Alari looked at the others. There was a subtle shift in posture. Vireel leaned in. They believe you are concealing your restorative method. I'm not, Garrett said. I'm just doing what humans do. The sash wearer stepped even closer. Then show us. Garrett blinked. What you want me to, lift something, demonstrate effort under limitation. He looked around, then pointed to a crate near the edge of the dome. That thing heavy. It contains refined borosite, approximately 30 kilograms. All right. He walked over, favoring his good side, and crouched. A sharp jolt went through his ribs as he leaned down, but he gritted his teeth. He slid his good hand under the base of the crate and hugged it against his body. Then, slowly, carefully, he lifted. His knees wobbled. He locked them. The cast on his arm pressed awkwardly against his chest, but he held the crate aloft for 5 seconds, then set it down. Not gracefully. But down, the room was silent. He stood up straight, breathing through his nose, sweat beaded on his forehead. "That hurt," he said. The sash-wearer stepped forward again. "Why did you do it? You asked me to." "I did not compel you. You could have refused." "I could have, but I didn't." The Alari turned to the others. A low, harmonic tone passed through the group. Vireel approached. "They are processing." Garrett sat down on the crate. "Tell them next time I'm bringing a chair, you did not hesitate, didn't have time to." That is what they find difficult to understand. Garrett looked at his wrapped arm. "What, that I lifted something while hurt?" "No, that you accepted the cost without resistance," he frowned. "I'm not sure I had a choice." "That is the point." The sash-wearer came back, slower this time. It knelt beside him. "You endured pain for understanding, not the first time. How do you know your limits?" Garrett looked up at the cracked dome above them, the faint smear of stars barely visible through the planet's haze. "You don't," he said. "You find them when you hit them. And if you're lucky, you're still breathing after." The Alari stood again. "It is a dangerous philosophy." "Yeah," Garrett said, "but it's ours." There was a pause. Then the Alari turned to Vireel. "He will speak at the convergence." Garrett blinked. "Wait, what's the convergence?" "A gathering of knowledge. Every aligned species offers a representative. It occurs once per orbit. How long until that? 5 days. And you want me to go, you must." Garrett rubbed his temples. "Great." He stood, cast dangling, and turned toward the exit. "Hey, Vireel." "Yes." "If I survive this, I want a chair. One with a back." Vireel's facial slit widened just slightly. "I will requisition one." Garrett adjusted the sling again, trying not to make a face as the edge of the cast pressed into his bruised ribs. They'd given him a clean uniform for the convergence, sleek navy blue, high-collared, stitched with a silver thread that looked far too ceremonial for someone who still had dried blood under one fingernail. He stood awkwardly behind a curved podium made of translucent material that pulsed faintly beneath his hands, like it was alive and mildly unimpressed with him. The convergence hall was enormous, open to the lavender sky, with a central platform surrounded by tiered seating. Each level was occupied by a different delegation. Garrett counted at least 14 distinct species, all in varying colors, shapes, and sizes, some with limbs that coiled, others with faces that folded inward when they blinked. He wasn't the first to speak. Before him, a delegation from the Mirn demonstrated a synthetic nerve web that allowed their kind to regrow full limbs in 28 hours. The audience applauded by emitting coordinated pulses of light or scent, depending on their physiology. Garrett clapped softly with his good hand, trying not to look like he was about to faint. Vireel stood nearby, arms crossed at the small of its back. It gave no signal, but Garrett knew it was watching. When his name echoed through the translator grid, Garrett stepped forward. His boots thumped dully against the polished platform. He took a breath and stared out at the gathered species, all waiting for him to do something extraordinary. Or at least, something that wouldn't embarrass the Terran Exploration Corps. He leaned slightly on the podium. "I'm Garrett Reeves," he said. "Human. Apparently the only one qualified to talk about pain because I dropped a rock on myself and didn't cry." Several murmurs passed through the tiers, not disapproval, just confusion. "I've been told you want to hear about how we recover, how we deal with injury. So here goes. We don't have regeneration pods, we don't grow new limbs, our bodies heal slowly. Imperfectly, bones take weeks, nerves longer. Sometimes things never go back the way they were." He flexed his fingers, ignoring the sharp tug in his forearm. The cast itched beneath the sling, but he didn't scratch. "I fractured my arm in 2 places, dislocated a shoulder, tore ligaments, and yeah, it hurt, still does, but that's not the part you're curious about. You want to know why I kept moving, why I laughed." A low ripple passed through the crowd. "I didn't laugh because it was funny. I laughed because it was absurd, because if I didn't laugh, I'd panic, and if I panicked, I'd stop thinking. And if I stopped thinking, I might die." He paused, letting that settle. "We're not the fastest or the strongest. Our biology's full of flaws. But we're good at adapting. You break a human and sure, we bleed. But we also learn. We build casts, braces, splints out of whatever's nearby. We limp until we can walk straight again. We joke about our injuries because it makes them feel smaller." From the corner of his eye, he saw Vireel shift. Not disapproval, just attentiveness. "I didn't lift that crate to show off. I did it because someone asked, and I wanted to prove we're not fragile, not because we can't break, but because we get back up." Silence followed, not uncomfortable, just still. The sash wearing a Larry from the dome approached the edge of the platform, its hands folded in front of its chest. "Why endure if the risk is permanent damage?" it asked. Garrett exhaled slowly. "Because sometimes the alternative is failure, or letting someone else down, or dying. And if I'm going to go down, I'd rather it be while trying." Another voice, deeper, gravelly, rose from the Dorathi tier, where beings shaped like stone obelisks leaned forward. "Is this pain not a deterrent?" "It is," Garrett said, "but we learn to move with it. Sometimes we ice it. Sometimes we scream into a pillow, but we don't stop living our lives because of it." A ripple of blue light passed through the Mirren audience. Their speaker stood again. "You suggest that limitation becomes function." "No," Garrett said. "I'm saying we don't wait for perfection. We just keep going." Another pause. Then the lights above the platform shifted to green, the signal for acknowledgement. He stepped down from the podium, legs slightly shaky, and made his way back to where Vireel stood. "You calculated your words carefully," Vireel said. "I winged it." "Winging implies improvisation." "Exactly." Vireel tilted its head slightly. "They accepted your explanation. Let's hope I don't have to drop another crate to make it stick." The two of them walked through the corridor leading back to the transport bay. Around them, the convergence hall slowly emptied, with delegates filing out in orderly lines, some gliding, some crawling. "Do they think we're insane?" Garrett asked. "They believe you operate on logic unfamiliar to them." "Close enough." Later that cycle, after the official debrief and several rounds of biometric scans, Garrett sat in the observation lounge drinking something vaguely citrusy and watching the sun dip below K-29's largest mesa. His arm ached not sharply, but a dull, steady throb that reminded him to slow down. Vireel entered quietly, carrying a small pouch. "This is for you." Garrett opened it. Inside was a joint brace fashioned from a Larry biofiber, smooth and flexible but firm where it needed to be. It was shaped to fit his wrist and elbow perfectly. "It will reduce strain," Vireel said, "and it responds to muscle tension." Garrett slid it on, feeling it adjust and settle. The relief was immediate. "Thanks," he said. "This is better than the cast. It is not decorative." "You should still rest." "I know." Vireel sat beside him. "Your presentation altered their perception. Of humans, of resilience. They believed endurance required enhancement. They now understand it can exist without it." Garrett leaned back, letting the brace support the weight of his arm. "I didn't plan to be a cultural ambassador." "You did not plan to fall." "Nope." They sat in silence for a moment, then Vireel asked, "Would you do it again? Fall down a cliff?" "No, thanks." "No, represent your species." Garrett didn't answer immediately. "I think I already did," he said. That night he slept without the sling for the first time. The pain was manageable. In the morning he walked to the relay tower alone. The Alari had restructured the conduit path, and he helped reconnect the lines slowly, carefully, using both hands. When Vireel joined him midway through, it didn't speak. It simply handed him tools as needed. At midday they finished. Garrett sat on the edge of a boulder, wiping dust from his palms. "So," he said. "What now?" "The convergence record will preserve your account. And your people will be invited to future assemblies." Garrett nodded. "Good." A breeze passed over the ridge, warm and dry. Vireel stood beside him. "You are not what we expected." Garrett looked out across the rust-colored plains. "Neither are you," he said, and that was enough.